Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel once again. In the last video, I talked about Merchant of Venice Act 1 Scene 1. So I thought today we'll start with the other book for literature paper, that is Treasure Trove. I'm going to start with the first short story in the syllabus. Rather, it is not a story, but it is a speech which was delivered by Chief Seattle, and the title goes like the Chief Seattle speech. So, first of all, the speech was delivered in the year 1854. Now, the Chief of Seattle, first let me talk about, give you a brief introduction to this man called the Chief of Seattle. Actually, in the earlier times, America, before the whites they reached to the mainlands of America, there were numerous number of red Indians who were scattered around all over America, and there was one particular tribe which was known as I have written out here, like Siquamish, if I'm correcting, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and the spelling it goes like Sequawamish. So this chief is basically the chief of this particular tribe called Siquamish, and in modern America there is a particular city which was named after this man, the chief of this Siquamish tribe. So you can understand the impact of this particular this man called Chief of Seattle. So basically this speech, it was on the context as I have tried to draw it out here, during 16th century in history, which is known as the age of exploration. Europeans, the Britishers, especially the whites in Europe, as they were so much advanced in science and technology as well as in engineering, so they came up with so many new inventions. So they came up with modern ships, compass and other equipments which are necessary to explore and discover new countries. So in this process, as you all know, the European, one of the prominent European was such as Christopher Columbus, who tried to discover India, but as a matter of fact, who actually discovered America. Now, first of all, I would like to explain you the term called the Red Indians. How comes this name called Red Indians? Because throughout the text there has been numerous times where Chief Seattle has emphasized on this term called Red Children or the Red Indians or the Reds. Now, throughout the globe, human beings they have been separated in terms of their skin color, which in other words which are known as races, for such as the blacks, especially in African continents, the whites, especially in the North Pole, in the European countries. We Indians, we are known as Aryans. If we go to the other part of the globe, that is China, Japan and other countries out there, they are known as Mongoloids. So basically the Red Indians, the name comes for those particular natives who were living in the American continent before the Europeans they reached to the mainland. So basically their skin color was a bit reddish, and just because of the mistake which was committed by Christopher Columbus, who thought that he discovered America, so there comes this term called Red Indians. So first of all, because of their skin color which was red complexion, and because of the mistake which was committed by Christopher Columbus. So finally, towards the end of 15th century, there was a man called Amerigo Vespucci, who ultimately came to the same land which was discovered by Christopher Columbus, and who claimed that it is not India but it is a new world. So towards the middle of the 16th century, the American continent, which was known as the New World, and ultimately this particular new continent, it was named after the man Amerigo Vespucci. There comes this name called America. Now, does a popular say that the continent, or the kingdom, the area which was dominated by the British Empire, there's a popular say that the sun of the British Empire, it never used to set, because the area which was dominated by the Britishers, it encompasses almost the 2/3 of the whole world. It enlarges from India to Australia, rather it enlarges from Singapore to America. So few weapons that the Europeans that they used, or in other words, in the words of Chief Seattle, the few weapons that were used by the Europeans. First of all, they used their gunpowder, their manpower, their ammunitions. In some cases where ammunitions were not sufficient, that they used the tool of religion, another motive of the Europeans, by dominating a particular place, a particular country. Their motto was also to convert the people into Christianity. Another tool, especially which was very much successful in our country, in India, that was to spread the language of English. So there can be so many different forms of slavery that the Britishers, or especially the whites, they used to practice. Not only slavery in the physical ground, which is visible in the African countries, there are also slavery in the intellectual ground, and the critics have criticized on the ground that actually the Britishers made Indians to be intellectual slaves to the Britishers. Now the critics apart, now criticisms apart, now let us come back to this particular text, Chief Seattle's speech. So basically, first of all, we need to know about the context of this speech. The speech was delivered as a reply. Now, to reply to whom? Reply to a particular man called Isaac Stevens. Now, who was this Isaac Stevens? As soon as the Europeans, they occupied the mainland of America, this Isaac Stevens was stationed as the governor of Washington. Now, this Isaac Stevens, this governor of Washington, he sent a particular message, or rather an offer, to the chief of Seattle, asking the chief of Seattle that the whites, they are ready to protect the Red Indians. They are ready to help the Red Indians to fight against their old enemies, other tribes such as Tsimshians and Haidas. But in exchange of this, the Red Indians will have to give away their land to the whites. So literally, as soon as the chief Seattle, he accepts the proposal, from that particular point onwards, the Red Indians will no longer be the owner of the land. But there's also a provision which has been kept by Isaac Stevens, that it doesn't matter, the Red Indians will no longer be the owner of their land, but there will be a specific place which will be reserved for the Red Indians, so that the Red Indians can stay, at least they can live and do their work in their respective lands. So this particular speech, it actually begins as a reply to that particular proposal, to that particular offer. So now, the speech, it starts itself by asking a question to the audience who gathered that particular time when this speech was delivered, that whether the Red Indians should accept this proposal which was offered to them by the British, or do they have any other choice? Do they have any other option? Can they wage a war against the whites? It was not possible. Now, this particular speech, it is full of literary devices. I just surprised that how intellectual that man, Chief Seattle, could have been. From the first line in the text itself, he starts, using the literary devices such as similes, such as metaphors, such as alliteration. The whole speech, it is full of literary devices. There are some specific areas towards the beginning of the speech where he compares that long before the Europeans, they came to the mainland of the America, there was a particular point on time when the number of the Red Indians, it was as large, as never-ending as the grasslands of America. But ultimately, as soon as the Britishers, they came to the mainland of America, they started forcing the forefathers of the Chief Seattle, people like Chief Seattle, towards the westwards. Now, towards this westwards, basically, if I start my journey from Europe, ultimately I'll come to the east coast of America. So as soon as the whites, they landed on the east coast of America, they started pushing the Red Indians toward the westwards. So basically, In this particular proposal, it has been said that the whites, they will occupy the lands of the red Indians, but at the same time, they will also provide him specific place to live and do their work on their places. So, the few themes that is highlighted throughout this speech. Now, first of all, the right of the nature, or in other words, the ecological rights. Now, if we search the history of America, the days of American history, it starts ranging from the Mayan civilizations. So people, they were living in the lap of nature long before the existence of the Europe or the whites, they came into their effect. Now, how comes now the red Indians would afford to accept these changes that started taking place as soon as the whites or the Europeans, they land on their particular land? So this particular speech, the most important theme that has been highlighted throughout this speech, it is the right of the natives, the right of the nature, and the ecological rights. Whether they would leave the place where their ancestors were born, they did their acts, and ultimately they died. And one of the most important themes out here, which has been repeated throughout the speech of Chief Seattle, that is the right of the land. At a particular point in time, when Chief Seattle says that for us, for the red Indians, the land where their ancestors were born and they were buried, this land, it means everything for them. They have their full respect. They live for the land where their ancestors were born. Now, on the other hand, Chief Seattle also criticizes the whites. Now, why? Because the whites, ultimately, America, it is not their land. America is not the land where their ancestors were born. Their ancestors were born in their own land, that is in Europe. And they too were buried in their own land, that is in Europe. But due to not having any particular respect for their own particular land, that is why leaving their own land, they keep on roaming around the world. So this is one of the greatest difference that Chief Seattle, he highlights through his speech. So the next part of it, the concept of religion. Like I said at the beginning, if you remember, the three most important weapons that were used by the Europeans to rule a particular land, and one of the important tool, that was the tool of religion. So as soon as the Europeans, the whites, they landed in the mainland of America, they tried to convert the red Indians to Christians. They had a common philosophy that we, the people of this world, we have one commonly God, one heavenly God, that is Jesus Christ. Now, Chief Seattle, he comes up with the criticism of that particular concept is that if we have a common fatherly figure, a common heavenly God, that is your God, that is the God of the white man, then why in the religious texts, such as religious texts in the Christianity, that is Bible that is not written for the red Indians, the Bible that is written for the whites. So there is nothing that is said, not even a single sentence that is actually written for the red Indians. So how can we accept that your father or your God, that is our father or our God? So according to Chief Seattle, his stand is very clear that if according to you, the Europeans, if we have a common father, a common heavenly God, then why that God is always stretching its hands like an infant baby to the Europeans, and they are waxing their numbers, higher and higher. They are enriching their power, they are enriching their wealth, they are encompassing the areas. Then on the other hand, what about the red Indians? If that particular father, that particular common heavenly God, it is also the God of the red Indians, then why that particular God, he is not bothered to see the helpless deaths, the untimely deaths of the red Indians? Then why that particular heavenly God, he is folding its hand in case of when a particular red Indians is in a trouble? So, and the third thing that he said, according to the Christian beliefs, the dead people, according to Christianity, the dead people, they do not have any respect over the land where it was born, he or she was born. According to Christian beliefs, as soon as a person he dies, his dead body is buried in the graveyard. According to Christian beliefs, its spirit, it gets separated from the body and it goes to the sky and it becomes a star. On the other hand, the Red Indian belief is that a particular Red Indian man, a Red Indian woman, whosoever who dies, they love the nativity, they love the land, they love the verdant valleys, they love the mountains, lakes, the rivers, everything, the natural, like I said at the beginning, the ecological rights. So they love the nature so much that it never leaves this earth. And every time the spirits who probably are no longer there within a body, every time they return to the place of their nativity where they were born and they were buried. So these three primary difference that Chief Seattle he highlights through this speech. So suddenly he asks a question, he throws to a question to the listeners, to the audience who gathered probably that particular ground where he was delivering this speech. So whether he should accept this proposal or not, whether he has that particular manpower, wealth, ammunitions to wage a war against the Britishers. At a particular point on time, he also criticized his own people, especially the youths. According to the Chief Seattle, the youth is impulsive, it is restless. According to the youths of the Red Indians, they feel that it is something blood against blood. According to them, the youths, they get angry, they think of taking their revenge by killing the whites. Ultimately, it is not possible to, physically it is not possible to defeat the whites. So it is better for them to accept the proposal. Few reasons that he put forward for this, because the Red Indians, their number is not that too high. They are no longer in need of an extensive country. On the other hand, this particular offer, if you remember at the beginning, I said the offer which was given by Isaac Stevens, the governor of Washington. According to Chief Seattle, this particular offer, it is like a voice. It is like a voice of the Mother Nature who is speaking to them through the dense darkness. Ultimately, three layers in which Chief Seattle he speaks. First of all, he speaks about the past, he speaks about the present, and finally he ends his speech talking and predicting what can happen in the future. Now, at a particular point in time in the speech where he says that when the last man, the last red man will be perished, will be killed by the whites, in the pubs, in the streets, in the forests, in the modern cities, and probably what America today is. Now, if the grandchildren of the present whites, if they think that they are alone, there is no other people who are living in this continent, then they would make a mistake according to Chief Seattle. And he says that there is no place which is dedicated to solitude. There is no place where you can be alone. So what basically Chief Seattle he wants to say, as I have written here, concept of death. According to Chief Seattle, actually there is no death. But death, according to Chief Seattle, it is just the change of the world. So, like I said at the beginning, the Red Indians, they believe that their dead people, they never leave the earth, they never leave the place where he or she was born. So, the white people, they never will be left alone in this particular land where the Red Indians were born. So, every time they would feel like to come back from their happy hunting grounds, they would come back to pay their visit to the place once they were flourished, once they were born, they were buried. Ultimately, he ends up his speech by saying that today, our time of decay according to Chief Seattle, the time of the decay for the red Indians, that is very, very close. On the other hand, the time of decay for the whites or the Europeans, that may be distant, but that will surely come. Nothing is permanent in this world. One day, each one of us will have to die. Today, the red Indians will die or dying or they are dead. One day, the whites too will die. Thank you.